Hi, Dan.
Hi, what?
You said bye to him. I said hi.
I said hi, yes, hi to you. Yes. I believe online. I believe online, yes. And he's up. This is so funny. It's all good. Here he is. Awesome. Good evening. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on our township website. Please all stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Ms. Prupus,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Thal-Eglow,
Here.
Mr. Vinayak,
Here.
Mr. Wasserman,
Here.
Mayor Meigans.
Here.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a moment today to recognize a former school board member, Danielle Prieto, her husband, Alfred, and son, Antonio, who were tragically killed 2 weeks ago. Our thoughts and our prayers go out to her family at this time, and I'd like to just have a moment of silence for them. Thank you. As previously announced, I request the Township Committee consider revising the agenda this evening to move the public comment period to earlier in the agenda and prior to consideration of our consent agenda resolutions. The Township is in the process of reviewing our rules of order, and it will come before the committee at a future meeting for consideration. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as revised? So moved. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Terrific. Thank you so much. May I have a motion to approve the October 19th regular Township Committee minutes? So moved. May I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? May I have a motion to approve the October 19th special Township Committee minutes? So moved. May I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, terrific. Reports. Mr. Wasserman, do you have any reports for us this evening?
Yes, I do. I have a couple reports.
Terrific.
After many years of discussion, I'm very pleased to report to our residents and Township Committee that new signage is coming for the parking deck. The new signage will appear on Essex Street, Millburn Avenue, and Lackawanna. There will also be clear signage on the parking deck with branding from the downtown. This was a result of a study commissioned from Explore Millburn. The signage will go a long way to activate and utilize the 400 parking spaces in the parking deck. More importantly, it will offer clear signage to visitors to the township. So this has been discussed for many years, and it's just something that I think that we've all wanted. And I'm just thrilled that it's finally going to happen. I hope in the next 2 months, really clear signage. So when our visitors come in to go to our stores and our merchants, the parking issue will be lessened because they're not looking for street parking. Hey, there's public parking like all towns have. So I think that that's something that's coming, and I'm very excited about it. Also, please reserve April 30th for our new Founders Day. This is something that CETA has been coordinating. There will be fun programming for the whole family, and there will also be a spring cleanup where we'll have teams of people helping to clean up parts of the township or all over the township. From flood mitigation, January 12th, we had a public meeting that I think was pretty well attended. There was a very informative presentation in terms of what the flood committee has been working on. And we're going, there's a lot of emphasis in South Mountain and Glenwood. And right now the flood mitigation committee we're breaking down into subgroups so we can work on different topics at the same time. And I think that's going to be really helpful. Other than that, I've been working with the Green Team, the Creative Collective. They're interested in perhaps offering some artwork at the train stations. And I've been trying to connect them with the right person in New Jersey Transit. So with a little, we'll see what happens, but we may have some new artwork at the train stations. And those are my reports.
Thank you so much. Committee Woman Prukas?
Mr. Molman, can you just give an update on MKW and where that whole process is with the Taylor Park Gateway project?
So MKW and the township have agreed on contract language. It was authorized by the township committee. I'm just waiting for it to be executed by the firm, and then I will create a purchase order and we can start moving forward with them. Their first steps are going to be to do a site analysis and have a site survey completed. At that point, they'll also schedule the first public session with the community, and we'll get that out to the public when it's ready.
Great. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a date probably for
Yep.
for the community session.
Yep.
Great. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Vinayak? Committeeman Vinayak.
Sure. So last week was a little busy week. I attended Shade Tree meeting that happens quarterly as being a part of that. Also attended flood mitigation where Mr. Wasserman just updated us. We will be having first and third Wednesdays. First Wednesdays will be the committee meeting for the flood committee. And then the third Wednesday would be the public meeting with the committee. In between, there will be, I think tomorrow we are meeting to make subgroups on each project. So there could be one or two leaders who will lead or take initiative on those projects and be a liaison to the committee for those projects. They could meet with their own schedule sooner or even more frequently. Then I also had 911 joint meeting where we got the update on a lot of different things they're working on. And like Ms. Eglu was trying to get them in here to present, but the meeting schedule was so packed, we never got them in. I asked them, or I told them I'll ask again the committee here if they're willing to get them into our next meeting or whenever we can to have them present.
Okay.
Last one, we all met, all the committee members met, and there was a question put out there, which I never got to ask. Mr. McDonald, maybe you could answer, or maybe Attorney Brad can answer. The finance committee, everybody wants to be a part of it. Can we open it up, not just for the committee members, but also instead of sub-finance committee where we are just internally meeting 4 or 5 of us, could we open it up to the residents so residents can participate in the budgeting process and also all the financials of the township like any other committee?
So certainly that's not my decision. That is the township committee's decision. However, my only suggestion would be that perhaps a
a step in that direction is to offer more in terms of our presentation to the public, maybe have separate meetings that we are able to present to the public that is interested in the finances of the municipality. Certainly there are pros and cons to going that route. However, maybe as we have done in the past, we've only had a budget introduction and a budget hearing. And perhaps there's maybe just room for a little bit more inquiry and presentation to those that may be interested in what we do in terms of finances.
So legally, we are not bound to just have subcommittee. We can have a regular committee, finance committee with residents.
Yeah.
That's the question I'm asking.
Yeah, right. So just so long as you meet the minimum thresholds of the statute, you can go above what's required.
Okay. Thank you. So you have your answers now. Thank you. That's end of my report. Appreciate it, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Committeeman. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I did have my first initial meeting with Mr. McDonald and Mr. Larissy, the new CFO, to get myself ready for when we do have our sub-finance committee meeting. Historically, that's always been the way the town has run. I haven't seen any issues with that. I would like to wait until we have our first meeting and really dive into this is something that we should change, because not everything has to be changed if it's not broken. And I don't believe that our system has been broken here in Millburn. And I'd like to first meet with Mr. McDonald, Mr. Vinayak, and Mr. Larissy and talk about that first as an inside discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can report that I was at the Environmental Commission meeting this week, and they're making a presentation. So that'll be great. And they're going to do that today. In fact, they're up next, and that was my only report. So take it away.
Hi, my name is Ed Hilsenrath, 85 Mohawk Road, Short Hills. Full disclosure, I'm not on the Environmental Commission this term, but I was on the last 2 terms, and I'm still actively involved in hopefully helping strengthen our stormwater management ordinance. I know you have a prepared statement. I'm just going to read it real quick to introduce our speaker. The New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection revised the Stormwater Management Control Act in March 2020. The intent of the revisions was to implement new minimum standards to better control flooding, reduce water pollution of New Jersey streams from polluted runoff, reduce erosion, and to recharge groundwater through infiltration. To satisfy the new standards, green infrastructure and low-impact development techniques must be utilized in major developments. Millburn Township adopted Stormwater Ordinance 2569-21 in March 2021 to enact these new minimum requirements. The Stormwater Control Act encourages townships to adopt standards more rigorous than the statewide minimum requirements. The Watershed Institute and others have worked to create an enhanced stormwater model ordinance to help townships improve stormwater management beyond the minimum requirements. On November 9, 2021, the Millburn Environmental Commission voted to support additional stormwater control measures recommended by the Watershed Institute through an amendment to Ordinance 2569-21, which I believe everybody has a copy of, our proposed amendment. By way of introduction, our speaker tonight, for over 7 decades, the Watershed Institute has worked to protect land and water by engaging local officials and strengthening environmental protections by improving planning and zoning. Mike Pissarro is the Advocacy Director for the Watershed Institute. He worked with the DEP to update the Stormwater Control Act of 2020 and wrote the enhanced model stormwater ordinance that will be discussed tonight. In addition to appearing before the planning and zoning boards to comment on new developments, his efforts led to the enactment of New Jersey's Clean Stormwater and Flood Reduction Act. May I present to you Mike Pissarro of the Watershed Institute? And he should be on Zoom.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. Again, my name is Mike Pissarro. I'm the Policy Director of the Watershed Institute, and I know we have very limited time, so I'm going to try to share my screen and go through it. All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. So just very quickly, so everyone has a full understanding of the way the water cycle works, the way our ground and stormwater works. Right now, when our land is not developed, most of it is infiltrated. Over half of it is infiltrated. That means absorbed into the ground. Less than 10% or so runs off the land. Some of it is evapotranspirated. So really nature is an imbalance. As you continue to develop, that balance sort of gets askew. Where in the extreme, when you have 75 to 100% of your watershed that is impervious, over 55% of that runs off, and only 15% of that infiltrates, and only 30% of that gets used by plants and evapotranspirated. And that means you have 55%, you have a lot more stormwater, a lot more runoff going into your waters, into your streams, and through your properties. And that's why we have the stormwater ordinance to help start to address that. And the other thing that is sort of going on, so as towns start to, as towns are developing more and more, and New Jersey is probably the oldest of the states and are really slated to be at full build out before in any other state, we have an increase in rainfall. So for the first 7 decades of the 20th century, New Jersey experiences about 44 inches. In the 21st century, we're really at 49 inches. So that's almost a 5-inch increase. But that's even sort of not telling the true story. The way we design our stormwater systems, we use, storm events, the 2, 10, 100-year storm, and those have designated numbers. So for example, the 2-year storm, we design our stormwater systems to be at 3.44 inches. But what really, DEP released a study right before Thanksgiving that shows really that number in the last 20 years is really almost 4.5 inches. And when we take into account climate change, what we're going to see is an increase from even that. So right now, our stormwater systems that we are designing, when we design a system to address the 2-year storm, we're really under designing now, and we're not even taking into account the future. So that's one problem. Another problem that happens is what we normally sort of think of as a storm, as a gentle rainfall that starts to increase in intensity and then sort of drops off, sort of that normal bell curve that we're used to in school. We're seeing an increase in extreme events, so really heavy rain events. So in the Northeast, that has increased by 55%. We're also seeing those storms come in very short periods of time. So instead of a 24-hour event, it's really 1 or 2 hours. And Ida was a prime example. Most of that rainfall came over a 2, maybe a 3-hour period of time. And we got a significant amount of water in a very short period of time. So we're obviously experiencing a significant amount of flooding events. And I'm sorry, I went too quick. And, really that is, Ida is just one of a series of storm events that has overwhelmed our communities. And it doesn't need to be a superstorm. It doesn't need to be a hurricane, but we're seeing heavy rain in very short periods of time that are overwhelming our communities. Not only are we having a flooding problem, we have a water pollution problem. So this chart is from the 2018 and 2020 report from DEP. They measure water quality every 2 years. And it might be hard to see the actual numbers, but for aquatic life, so are our streams healthy enough for the bugs and fish that live in it? a vast majority of our waters in New Jersey that are measured are not healthy enough for aquatic life. And that's the 2018 and 2020 report. And just as an example, here's a 2010 report. Aquatic life, there's a sort of in the middle. And again, a vast majority of that water is not meeting standards. So our stormwater management systems, our stormwater management ordinances are designed to minimize the increase in pollution, but they're not designed to reverse it or stop it. So, we're seeing our trend of our waters declining. Our best waters are getting worse. Luckily since 1972, our worst waters are getting better. But by and large, that is because of the way we use our land. And our modern stormwater ordinances have been around since 2004. And that trend has either stayed relatively stable or has gotten worse. And so because of that, again, I'm going to say again, our stormwater ordinances are designed to minimize the increase of pollution, but not to prevent the increase. They're supposed to minimize the increase in runoff, but they don't reverse or stop the increase in runoff. And as you create more impervious surface, you're going to increase more runoff. They only address large developments. So our ordinances, the model ordinance from DEP and a lot of municipalities only deal with 1 acre sites that either disturb an acre of soil or create a 1/4 acre of new impervious. They don't address existing problems. So Millburn and a lot of other communities had seen significant development before 2004 or before 1983 when we had a Stormwater Management Act. So they were developed before there was any stormwater management. So those sites are developed, they are contributing to a flooding and water pollution problem. And our stormwater ordinances don't address that at all. They don't address volume. So our rules deal with trying to control the rate of stormwater runoff. They don't deal with the volume. And again, as you increase impervious surfaces, you're increasing the volume of stormwater that runs off our site. And again, as I mentioned, water quality is not improving. Those charts I showed you demonstrate that they're not improving. And flooding, we all know, is getting worse. And as climate change continues, it is going to get worse than it is now. So DEP in their model ordinance, this is a lot of language, I'll admit that, but I'll send you these slides. But this, do point out the municipalities can do better, can enact enhanced stormwater management to better protect their communities and improve their water quality. So the Watershed Institute, in collaboration with a few other partners, developed an enhanced model stormwater ordinance, which have a couple components: redefining major development, reducing the thresholds from that 1 acre soil disturbance and a 1/4 acre of impervious surface. We recommend dropping it down to a 1/2 acre soil disturbance or 5,000 square feet of impervious cover. Address minor developments. So when you don't meet major development, but you're adding impervious surface, whether that is just a small development or in addition to an existing property, you start to address stormwater management. So if you have a building that was built in the 1950s and you're adding to it, you start to capture some of that stormwater runoff that is already occurring and that you're making worse by adding, and you catch that, you start to address, and you start to chip away at the problem of not having any stormwater management when it was built, and also meeting the needs of that new addition. Capture and treat stormwater on site. So as I mentioned, our rules deal with the rate that stormwater runs off, but not the volume. So having an ordinance that retains on site a certain amount of stormwater, so it never reaches our streets and never reaches our streams, will reduce flooding and improve water quality. require better analysis from development as to the impacts of that development. And also permitting and reporting requirements. One of the things we've seen over the years, and DEP and others have seen, is all these stormwater management systems get built, but they're not being inspected and maintained. So having in your ordinance a requirement that the people who are responsible for those systems report back to the municipality that they have inspected them, that they have maintained them, and that they are functional. And that is, really to help the municipality fulfill one of its requirements of its municipal separate storm sewer permit. It's a general permit that DEP gives out to all the municipalities. They have to qualify that, annually, that all of the stormwater requirements have been met, that these systems are functioning, are being maintained. And that's sort of one of the ways to help a municipality meet that. So there are many municipalities have adopted a minor development and have adopted a reduction in that major development requirement. So again, reducing the threshold for major development from that 1 acre or quarter acre of impervious, or creating that minor development. So there are multiple towns that have done that. For example, one of the municipalities I'm most familiar with is Princeton, because we have worked significantly with them because they're one of our neighbors. They have reduced the major development down to that 1/2 acre and 5,000 square feet. They've also adopted a minor development. So for an increase of 400 square feet of impervious surface, they require the treatment of 2 gallons per square foot, preferably through green infrastructure. Verona and Cranford have also done both a reduction in the major development and have created a minor development requirement. Verona basically adopted our recommendation from the Enhanced Stormwater Management Ordinance. Cranford have reduced even farther. They have reduced the major development, I think it's to 1,000 square feet of impervious. And they've also created a sliding scale of minor development. And there are multiple ways towns have addressed that minor development. Here are some examples. Again, we have recommended that 2 gallons per square foot. And we think it makes sense to do it in that way because it's a very simple calculation. So as you add an addition to your property, you've added a 400 square foot addition, you have to do 800 gallons of stormwater management through green infrastructure. And a lot of people say, well, that's an additional cost. People are strapped. They want to, add to their property, but they don't necessarily have all this additional money to do stormwater management. And, and that's a fair assessment. So one, again, that 2 gallons per square foot is a very simple calculation that doesn't require necessarily an engineer to do those calculations and to design that system. That is something a landscape architect or an architect can do. So there's, sort of a cost issue right there. And two, when you add on to a property, you're going to landscape around it. So instead of putting some shrubs and bushes and flowers around your new addition, rethink of that landscaping as being part of your stormwater management. So put in a rain garden, put in a bioswale, put in some rain barrels and a treatment train of a couple different systems. You've now still created landscaping, but that landscaping is creating that benefit for you. And again, here are some other sort of minor development requirements. The other thing with a minor development, and this is not something you can do with a major development, but with a minor development, there's going to be circumstances where it doesn't make sense to do stormwater management, either because it is too expensive or the site cannot accommodate it. Allowing for a waiver fee so the municipality can collect money and use that to do stormwater management and economies of scale issue. And so you're still getting the benefits of stormwater management, but you're not necessarily forcing people to do it on their property where they cannot or should not be doing it. So I think that's important, but that's not something you can do for a major development because DEP does not allow you to waive those requirements. But for minor developments, which aren't required by DEP, we think that makes a lot of sense, creates some flexibility, and provides the municipality with funds they can use to improve existing systems or build new ones to help, address flooding in an economical sense. Again, I'm not going to go over this, but again, having some sort of inspection reporting requirement so the municipality knows that the systems that do exist are being maintained, that they are functioning, and helps that municipality comply with its requirements. And again, going back to sort of that minor development, the cost aspects, it doesn't have to be super expensive. According to the Rain Garden Alliance, it's about $3 to $5 a square foot if you do it yourself. It's about $10 to $15 if you hire a landscaper to do it. The Watershed Institute has installed several projects in Hopewell Borough, a small 1 square mile, mostly built out area where we went in and built some projects or retrofit an existing stormwater basin. And that's about in line with what we're seeing at $10 to $15 per square foot. I think that cost might go down a little bit less if you are, as you're installing your, building your foundation, you use the backhoe to dig out your rain garden ahead of time. You're not bringing in a backhoe or a bulldozer or something, twice. We have tons of resources about green infrastructure, about our enhanced stormwater management ordinance. We have the ordinance itself online. We have a green infrastructure training course. So training the people who are designing these systems, installing them and maintaining them so that we know they work. It is, this green infrastructure is a paradigm shift that DEP started in 2020. It's not new to the country, it's new to New Jersey. And one of the things we want to make sure is these things are occurring in a way that makes sense or functioning and don't backfire on us. And so I have some links to those different resources. Again, that training course for green infrastructure, we're going to have again on March 2nd, 9th, and 16th. It's a 2-day intensive, in class and then a day of field work. Again, to make sure when these systems go in, they're being maintained. And the other thing, sort of the emphasis on green infrastructure and not necessarily hard development and drywalls is sort of one of those things we shy away from. That is one of those go-to solutions. Well, you build a development, put in your drywalls, and you're fine. There's a couple of reasons why I'm not particularly enamored with dry wells. One, it's one of those systems you put in the ground, it's engineered, it's designed, it's concrete, and it's in the ground. You don't even know it's there most of the time. You forget about it. They can be very expensive. You're not really doing maintenance on them because you forget they're even there. And if you don't make sure your soils can accommodate them, all you've done is create a small reservoir that overflows, doesn't really infiltrate, and can back up. So we do shy away from those a bit. Princeton, when they adopted their enhanced stormwater ordinance back in 2017, that was one of their go-to solutions. And again, without the percolation tests, without making sure the soils can infiltrate, and you were significantly above the seasonal high water table, so you weren't really, intercepting that water table, found they didn't really work very well. So that's sort of one of the caveats. That was a whole lot in what I hope was 10 minutes. So if people have questions, I would be more than glad to answer them, whether it is here tonight or sometime down the road. If you think, well, wait a second, I should have asked that question, please feel free. Either call myself or actually, she's now our assistant director, Sophie Glovier, who's been working very hard, meeting with municipalities and getting them to adopt enhanced stormwater ordinance.
Thank you so much, Mike. Does anyone from the committee have any questions about this stormwater?
I would just ask, it would be very helpful if we could maybe see just Princeton and Cranford's, as two examples to help us kind of like see what they've done and how, because my only question is if you encourage someone to plant a rain garden, a lot of times those aren't kept up, and we've seen some examples of that. So are we going to send our shade tree people to start inspecting people's rain gardens, and when they start looking droopy after a year or two or three, then who's responsible? And then they're going to just put in regular hydrangeas or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I would be interested to see what those other, just to take randomly those two towns.
Certainly, I will certainly send them on. Just let me know who I can send them on to. I can send them on to Elizabeth to forward on to you, or however you would like. I will acknowledge green infrastructure. You do have to maintain it for a year or two. Just like when you would start your own, flower bed. The upfront work is very important, and afterwards it somewhat takes care of itself. That has been our experience so far, but it is important to maintaining, and one of the reasons we're doing so much education around that as well.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Mike? No? Seeing none, do we have consensus? Alex, should we have Martha take a look at this, our township engineer? Would that make sense?
Yes, I do. I mean, I think from the standpoint of comparing what the committee passed in 2021 as well as what just been presented here.
Right.
And, providing some feedback to the township committee from your township engineer, as
Mhm.
well as getting those other ordinances from Princeton and Cranford.
And maybe Verona as well? Okay. Do we have consensus for that? Yes?
So,
Okay. Terrific. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much.
Our pleasure. Okay, public comment. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern and clearly state your name and address, and speak loudly so that your comments be understood by all and properly recorded. For the convenience of our community, there is a remote option available. If you called in and would like to comment, please press *6 now. If you're attending by computer or electronic device, please click raise hand button. All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. Whenever an audience or committee member reads verbatim from a prepared statement, please email a copy to the Township Clerk's office at townclerk@millburntwp.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted when there is 30 seconds remaining. This is a business meeting, and please do not address professionals or staff directly, and please do direct all comments to me. Each individual will be given one opportunity to make their public comment. Please be patient, and we will address each member of the public that wishes to speak. I will now open the public comment period.
May I remove my mask?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld, 11 Alexander Lane,
Good evening.
Short Hills, New Jersey. Happy New Year. I could not make or hook into the last meeting. As to your proposed Township Committee new policy and procedure, please look at other municipalities. Like tonight or tomorrow, Hoboken is going to be considering their new policies, and they allow people to speak twice. And when they talk about agenda items, it's 5 minutes, but look at them and to some of the neighboring one. As to resolution 22053, that's the SID calendar year 2022 budget introduction. There's a lot of issues here. First, there's a real question why the public does not have the calendar year 2020 adopted budget and the actual budget that was amended without the approval of the TC. There's questions about the litigation that's ongoing, about the validity of that entity. I've asked a series of questions at the SID meetings, They've been written. I have not received answers. One thing that we found out today, only one member that was on the SID board has signed an oath of office and allegiance, and that's Mr. McDonald. No one else did. That's a very significant fact. When Mr. Grillo was retained in May 2021, the public was not allowed to speak. And one of the things when you do a comparison of the line items, you'll see that there was an increase in his salary, that they did not come to the TC. These were all set forth in a series of questions I did forward to you today that I sent to the SID. I'm still waiting for the answers. Some of these questions were asked last November. Regarding the emergency management coordinator, that goes back to September 1st when we had Ida. I've made various Oprah requests and I still have not responded as to what happened that day. Did our coordinator earlier in the day give warnings that were ignored by people? I again ask that you adopt closed executive session minutes, meeting minutes, and post them. It's very important regarding what happened on July 30th and September 9th of the past year. As to the fair share housing settlement litigation, I thank you for having a public forum, but there's still a lot of issues that need to be answered to the public. Through technology, many of us are comparing other municipalities. Today, something odd happened. I received a notice from the court reminding me that there's a hearing in 2 weeks on Friday, the 28th. What's unique here is I have not seen the special master's final report because I have questions about calculations and we need to look at that. I still think you need to look at the retention of special counsels that are retained through the JIF and just keep an eye on the test case litigation. On Thursday morning, there will be a public hearing that the link is being, that's regarding the Bacone South. I have real questions about whether certain documents, why certain documents that are exhibits were not submitted by the municipal attorney. And remember, there's two counsel. There's the zoning board attorney and the attorney for the municipality. And you should be comparing the work product of each one. I understand my time is up, but please be prudent regarding the SID budget because there's a lot of serious questions out there.
Thank you, Mr. Feld.
Nancy Stone, 10 Fielding Road and 266 Essex Street. Broken promises. Maggie, congratulations, by the way. I'm very pleased with the situation. Maggie, you are starting with a not so clean TC slate that needs to be addressed. Go back to the SID June 9th, 2020 YouTube videos. Start with that. The June 9th, 2020 YouTube videos when Richard and Jackie were selling us the special improvement district. I hope you have the good sense to review the past DC meetings and check the events prior to your election and you taking office January 2021. Please review what was promised with the SID and what is being delivered today by Richard. Richard, you took responsibility with Jackie and you have failed and lied to the residents. Jackie and Richard both stated on the record that the budget would not go above the previous SID budget, period. You're on record publicly for that. Jackie and Richard also stated that 50% of the executive director's salary would be paid for by the town, which is technically the residents paying in the form of our real estate taxes. Never, ever, ever did they propose or vote on the added executive director expense to this budget, or did the TC vote on the extra $50,000 in the budget that you are proposing this evening? Or I should say that you're being asked to vote on this evening. Where is the resolution by the TC that they were adding this $50,000 to the original SID budget to pay for the executive director? The previous executive director's salary was $70,000 when I was the treasurer of the Special Improvement District. We are now paying $106,000 with zero accountability and or any resolutions to approve Steve Grillo's salary in 2022. What happened to Ryan Gleason? Where is the Marla Itzen contract? Why is a nonprofit carrying forward money? If the SID did not use all the money, it should be deducted from next year's allocation of funds which is paid for by the taxpayers of this town. The board is appointed by the TC, not by the property owners who have to pay the assessments, which begin this year. There's so many things wrong with this proposed budget. So far, over $100,000 has been spent defending the lawsuit because Sanjeev decided that he wanted to litigate and not mediate, and that was voted with the rest of you. We ask questions, we do not get answers, we're fed up. Compare the TC approved budget with the amended SID budget without TC consent. I strongly urge you to postpone tonight's approval upon further investigation of these fiduciary responsibilities you are accounted for. Where are the audits? They only have 2 more sentences. Where are the audits for 2021 and 2020, 2021 before you move forward with any of the monies for 2022? I do not trust Richard and Jackie. They did not deliver on the financial oversight. Maggie, you have a responsibility to oversee what is being brought to you today. The TC members and anybody who voted yes to this should vote no to this $250,000 budget. I also want to know one other thing. We're allocating this money, but in the meantime, crime is going up in our neighborhood. And I understand the police budget is being cut for overtime, which is absolutely unacceptable. If anything, the overtime should be increased. And I understand Richard and Sanjeev are both responsible for overseeing that as well. The police need to be absolutely well-funded in this community so that we can be protected as one of the highest tax-paying people in Essex County.
Thank you.
My sincerest congratulations to the new mayor and deputy mayor, of course. The subject is permits. This is an email that I sent to the deputy mayor on September 30th of 2020. Jerry said he did not see the breaking of the code violation in the act and that the installations are a year old. I questioned the install at the time concerning his license. He did not require a New Jersey license because his firm had a license. He returned a second time to adjust the installation. I sincerely believe that codes and permits should be respected. If instructed by the township, Jerry will pursue the issue and William Christian will do inspections. Essentially, management is apparently trying to cut corners, in my opinion. Do you have any suggestions to the deputy mayor? September 30th, 2020. Good morning, Al. I totally don't understand if Jerry is telling you there are code violations. Why do you have to bring into the township committee a violation? It's a violation and they should be appropriately fined. They should be appropriately fined. That was the same day. Let's see. A penalty totaling violations. A violation was issued for a total $0 penalty payable to Essex County on January 3rd, 2022. 2022, that's a few weeks ago. Penalty totaling $50,000 could have been levied, payable to Millburn Township had Mr. Egger promptly issued 25 violations locally. I have checked with the neighboring township and the Essex County Board of Appeals office. A penalty of $0 for 25 permit violations is essentially not a penalty. Jerry is president of Essex County Code Enforcement Officials. As I stated at the December 21st township meeting, failure to obtain permits is criminal and should be handled accordingly. Failure to obtain permits jeopardizes the safety of residents and deprives Millburn Township of revenue, thereby unfairly placing monetary obligations on other residents. I'm sorry, I'm a compliance nut. Other townships believe in permits. This is Mount Olive Township, wherever that is. They put this on their website. I have a a number of other townships, they believe in permits also. And if you don't, you get fined. I checked with Verona, they fine people, other townships in South Jersey. But Millburn, we're a very, very wealthy community, I know that. But I can tell you this, there are a number of residents who are really unhappy. And I won't use any vulgar language,
Thank you.
but I remember some words being a truck driver in my early days.
Thank you. No.
This is not right. By the way, one more question. I did send an email. I don't know if you saw it earlier today.
I
Concerning.
responded, Mr. Corlin.
Oh, I did not. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir. Yes, I did.
And I thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Have a lovely evening. I see hands raised, Jess.
Good evening, Kerry Urso, 514 Millburn Avenue, Short Hills. I'd just like to take a short moment. I would like to actually mimic what Nancy Stone said. When I first learned about the SID and tried to get an understanding, the first person I called was Nancy Stone. She has a understanding, she's passionate, she has the knowledge. She should be very well respected. She's standing up for what's right for this town. And I do appreciate that she stood with me during this journey. And I'd like to thank Jeffrey Feld for believing in what's right. So regarding the resolution 22-053, the validity of this entity is in litigation. The entity never existed when the lawsuit commenced, and the township attorney failed to name the new entity as a necessary party. And yet, how much money has been squandered to date with your personal attacks and retaliatory discovery requests for leases and tax returns that have absolutely no relevance to the validity of the SID under state law? Why hasn't the township attorney provided this body with a legal opinion? But yet, this body will continually approve bill list items from this firm in this matter. Can this board take action when something is under litigation? Is it prudent for a fiduciary of the public trust to take action when something is subject to litigation? Can this board vote in favor on a budget for a SID whose validity is dispute and subject to litigation? And might add, approving a budget with line items that the entity is unable or rather refuses to furnish the public with staffing contracts? Are there repercussions for the members of this body who vote in favor of an agenda items currently under litigation? When are you going to tell the people how much the assessment will be? Lastly, what is the status of the local access cable channel? Thank you and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Hi, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, hi. Amy Lawrence, 36 Hawthorne Road. I want to thank the Township Committee and the Environmental Commission for bringing Mr. Pizarro and the Watershed Institute to tonight's meeting. I think that watershed management and environmental policy for our town are very important for our future, and our town has the opportunity to be proactive about that. And tangentially to those issues, obviously around development that's occurring in town or will be occurring, and protection of, open space and watershed land, i.e. what Mr. Pizarro said, that the more, the more permeable space that remains, the more water is absorbed, the less problems with flooding in the town, especially in light of, changes in climate and more flooding that's supposed to be coming. So I want to thank you for bringing, that conversation to the table. And I hope so what's not clear to me is what Mr. Pizarro presented is potential policy that could be adopted into the township zoning code. And as well as other opportunities for the town to be very proactive in this manner. And I'd just like to understand more about what you all are thinking in that regard. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good
Jean
evening.
Yes, hi. Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart Avenue. I want to say that I'm 100% in support of Mr. Viniak's suggestion to open the Finance Committee to residents. Contrary, I think, to what Ms. Eglo commented on, things are broken and do need to be fixed. And residents have been persistent and consistent in their feedback regarding things like our legal fees and the $1 million amount that was spent, or maybe more than that last year, as one example. I really believe we have something to add, and I think it's an excellent idea, and I'm really sad to hear it being dismissed that way by Ms. Eglo out of hand. Second, I'm concerned, as Mr. Feld is, on the fair share housing settlement and the public input. It was great to have the session, but we really didn't get far enough in terms of getting our questions raised and answered. And I'd like to make a formal request, and I have already in writing, that we have a second session with those experts so that we can continue to raise our questions and get some answers. As far as the SID budget, my question is similar to what others have raised. Why are we considering the approval of the Explore budget, given that this is subject of active litigation? In fact, this Thursday at 9 a.m., the public is invited to attend the proceedings by Judge Moore about this case and other cases, that we've been able to look in on. I think it really sheds some good light on the issues facing the town, and gives us pause to question why we're spending the money in the way we are on litigation. I'd also like to talk about the public input regarding the retention agreement of Mr. Grillo, other consultants. Why have we not been able to give input on that before it's been approved? I asked Mr. Parlavecchio a question at the last Board of Trustee meeting and received no acknowledgement or an answer. And my question was, the taxpayers have given close to $1 million of investment in Explore Millburn Short Hills through various means. It's been almost 2 years, and this goodwill and a lot of money expended by the community. I asked, will they be giving a review of the return on that investment to the community? And I received no response. I think we are owed that, given the support that the community and businesses have given to this organization. How has that impacted our tax rolls and the economic return to Millburn Short Hills as an organization? I also am concerned that Mr. Feld has offered over 36 times to meet with the BA, TC members, the ED of Explore, to review his topics of concern and others in the community leading to litigation. He's never been given the opportunity or the consideration of a meeting yet. Another property owner in town who has brought suit against the township has been given that opportunity. I still don't understand what the difference is and why the discrimination. It doesn't make any sense to me. Also, Mayor Miggins, I've written an email to you, BA McDonald, and Police Chief Gilfetter. We are as a community shocked by the number of brazen thefts taking place right here on our streets, in our neighborhoods. This weekend, Mayor Miggins, in our neighborhood, a dad was taking his child to a sports practice. He just had pulled his car out of the driveway and just ran right back to the door to get his son. And while he was doing that, a van pulled up. Somebody ran out of the van and grabbed his car and took it. And that was extremely concerning. I think there's many of those incidences that we're not really hearing about or we don't know about. And I think it's time that our community has a Zoom meeting with the chief of police and whoever else you believe should be there so that we can understand what is happening in our community, how many incidences are occurring, what the nature of those instances are, what we can do safely to deter them and protect our families, neighbors, and property in light of these increasingly scary, dangerous incidences. And I'd really appreciate getting some sort of response to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Hey folks, good evening. Regina Truitt, 385 Hartshorn Drive. Just briefly, I want to thank you for rearranging the agenda format so that public comment is prior to your voting for resolutions. That's a big move, and I want to thank you for that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Regina.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Stephanie Morgan, 49 Greenwood Drive, Millburn. I see that later on the agenda, Resolution 22052, Millburn is going to be signing on to for the cost sharing for the Mayor's Council for the Rahway River Watershed Flood Control. I've lived here we've lived here for about 30 years in the South Mountain area. And I would just like to suggest that the Mayor's Council use its influence at the state level, including the governor's level, to designate New Jersey's portion of the federal infrastructure budget that's been funded. I understand that New Jersey is going to get a share of that. And I would like to suggest that since we discussed stormwater today, that in a more global sense, we focus on it at the state level as well and make sure that as participants in this Rahway River Watershed Flood Control Mayor's Council, that we push to get funds assigned or allocated from the overall infrastructure bill for New Jersey, that it be allocated to this to the Flood Control Council in order to tackle the problem that really is much larger than local municipality issues. It really is also a function of what's going on at the state level. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello?
Good evening.
Good evening. Olga Yulitina, 2 Overlook Terrace. And my topic of concern is noise pollution. And I'd like to talk about music and planning of the new design of the Rose Garden and Getaway project. So music can induce well-being and relieve pain, as we know, but you will feel helpless and trapped if music is unwanted. Music can be intrusive, harmful, and cause anxiety, stress, rage, and annoyance. And background music can have detrimental impacts on attention and communication, and hindering the brain from organizing and making sense of information. Since music can be associated with negative life events, personal association with music can result in individual experiencing trauma and painful memories. Music also can be a weapon. Music can have been used for torture throughout history. Music has been used as a sensory overload resulting in loss of orientation to break prisoners. And we know that squares, parks, and other open spaces welcome every citizen. And usually, if nuisance conflict with your mood or taste, you can simply walk away from it and enjoy the rest of your day. But what if you can't move away? What if the unwanted is brought up to your backyard and forced upon you? What if it follows you from your backyard to the kitchen and from the living room and to the basement? Most people choose their music because everyone has their taste when music is concerned. People go to concerts of specific artists by choice. And most people in the suburbs don't want any background noise. They enjoy the peace of high quality suburban life. Now, suppose you build a performance stage in the Rose Garden and near the residential houses and buildings. In that case, psychological torture will be imposed on those completely and helplessly trapped in their homes and near the music venues. There is a noise ordinance in our town, but unlike other towns, you specifically mentioned noise coming from retail food establishments and bars and said nothing about street music. It seems you purposely delayed the amendment of the noise ordinance, and you purposely delayed the protection of your constituents to achieve your other goals, such as having millions of taxpayers' money given to builders for unnecessary projects. If the outcome of the May 2021 Getaway Committee is that outcome predetermined, will public hearing only be a farce? All you need is more people from another side of the town to overweight the cries of those who live near the garden. And all you need is people who will not be directly affected to cast their vote. Theoretically, you will follow the law and use democratic process. In reality, you will act like tyrants and dictators. As an entity designed to protect us, you do the opposite. You ignore our pleas and therefore neglect your responsibilities. Moreover, you cause harm to the quality of our lives and bring down the value of our properties. Please stop doing that. Let's have a fresh start. Show us your goodwill and find better place to build your performance stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ulatina. That's everyone? Everyone has spoken that wishes to? I will now close the public comment period. Would any of our professionals or committee members like to address any of the comments that they heard this evening? Mr. Vinayak, anything?
There was a comment made on the burglaries and car thefts. And I know we have been maintaining KPIs, township KPIs, where we share those numbers. It has gone up, but you're not hiding those numbers from anybody. It is out there on the website, which you can click and see it for monthly basis. So I'm not putting in that we have to do something else on it. That is what a professional can take care, but just to remind that there is township KPIs that shares these numbers monthly.
I share Mrs. Pasternak's concern about the car thefts. Yes, right around the corner. Mrs. Pasternak lives around the corner from me. There was a car that was stolen that was left running in their home, and that is frightening. Somebody ran in and left their car running, and somebody did come and steal it. And that's horrible. What's happening, unfortunately, is there's car thefts are happening in every town in our communities all around. It's not just Millburn Short Hills. It is Westfield, it is Summit, it is Chatham, it is all our surrounding towns. The wealthier towns are having their cars stolen. Now, we're also making it very easy for car theft. We are leaving our key fobs in our cars. We are leaving our cars unlocked. So many of us have these Ring cameras. I know I see it. You could see people going down the driveways. Somebody jumps out of a car, they go to see, and if it's a crime of opportunity. And I think, and I know, and I've been receiving feedback that oh my gosh, how many messages are you going to send out? How many texts are you going to send out? The police department is contacting us all the time. Well, Mr. McDonald, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were doing a real big push on messages from Chief Gilfetter and texting people to make sure they lock their cars, how did our numbers do in terms of car thefts?
That was during the month of November, and those numbers went down significantly.
They did. So I implore everyone in Millburn Short Hills, please, oh please, do take your car fobs in, do lock your cars. And if we're leaving you messages, sometimes, we all live such busy lives that, we might have forgotten to lock it. I'm fortunate enough that my car says, hey, you've left your car unlocked. Do you want us to lock it? And it locks it for me. But not everybody has that opportunity. And we're busy running around all the time with our lives, right? So we probably don't even think that we're leaving our fob in, but we are creating wonderful opportunities. I'd love for the thieves to think, don't go to Millburn and Short Hills, because those people never leave their their fobs in their cars. I would love for that to happen. So I realize these messages might be a bit much, but every time we play them or every time we send out a text, it might click it in for just one more person. And so I think that's really important. But in the meanwhile, we will be meeting, their mayors in the surrounding areas will be meeting to discuss what we can do in order to eradicate this problem. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. Thank you. Anything, Ms. Egler?
Couldn't even begin.
No, nothing. Anything to add to anyone else's Mr. Wasserman?
Yeah, I have a few comments, but
Please.
I think because we're going to talk about the budget, I mean, the SID budget.
You wish to save them?
Why don't I save my comments for the SID budget?
Okay, terrific. Let me just make sure. I will ask you a question and you'll save it. Mrs. Stone, they had hired, from memory serving me, they had hired Mr. Gleason and then he chose to move on. He didn't stay correct. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if we're allowed to discuss personnel issues. I think legally we're not allowed to, but that's, Mr. Wasserman will get to that, committeeman. And as far as a not-profit being able to carry money forward, I don't know about that. Maybe our attorney knows that. I don't know if you're allowed to do something like that, but somebody maybe could address that. Committeeman Wasserman, if you can carry forward money that isn't used in a not-profit. This I don't know. And then Mr. McDonald, Mr. Carlin and his codes and permits and violations, et cetera. And I did send you his email earlier today. Sure, you want to turn that on? Thank you, sir. If we could look into that. I mean, we do have code enforcement. We have people that work in code enforcement. The pictures were pretty telling. So if we could look into that for Mr. Carlin, that would be terrific. I don't know about leaving money on the table. I never like to leave money on the table. So I don't know about that $50,000, but maybe you could speak to that.
Well, I mean, certainly there is a situation that you are aware of that Mr. Carlin is dealing with within his property that he lives at.
Yeah.
And I want to be careful about making assumptions or suppositions in this meeting about what did or did not occur, but Mr. Carlin is correct that there was a violation that was addressed. However, the violation was not issued until January. And we have done that. We did not fine the individual who's involved in a violation. However, you know, again, there is a vast amount of discretion that's left to the construction official to be able to enforce and gain compliance for individuals. I did receive the email that you received today. However, we need to take a look at that and determine the responsibility of the municipality and multifamily dwellings when it comes to those types of situations that are governed by the Department of Community Affairs.
Perfect.
So we will take a look at it.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Urso, they're going to speak to what the assessments, I believe, with Sid. And as far as the access to the cable channel, I believe you are working on something, Mr. McDonald, in reference to the access to the cable channel.
That is correct.
Okay, terrific. And Ms. Lawrence, what kind of policy to be adopted? Well, what we're thinking about is having our township engineer take a look at the proposal from the Watershed property. So we'll get back to you, to be continued. Committeeman Wasserman will speak to the SID budget and all those questions that you might have had, Mrs. Pasternak. And as far as meeting with Mr. Feld and you speaking on his behalf, I have never met with anyone that has a current lawsuit against our town. I feel that we represent, when we as a committee sitting up here represent 21,000 people. And I think it's important that we, it's my pleasure to meet with anybody who wishes to meet with me. But when somebody has an active lawsuit against a town, what that would mean is that I would need to have an attorney present. So in as much as people have a problem with our attorney bills, we would need to have an attorney with us at our, I would never not have an attorney. It wouldn't be fair to the rest of the community. So as soon as we wrap up all those lawsuits, it would be my pleasure to meet with you, sir, at any time. But at this time, I don't think it's fair to the rest of our community to pay an attorney to sit while you're in litigation with us. And I have never sat with anyone who sued the town at all. So that's that. And then Ms. Ulatina, there is, as far as the Rose Garden, I personally don't want the Rose Garden touched or moved. That's just my own personal opinion, but I'm one of 5 votes up here. And I think that right now where we're at with the performance stage and everything else we have, as Mr. Molman said, we have just signed off on contracts for the first part to see what they will come up with, different plans they would come up with. And there's been many members of the community that are involved and invested in working on this. So as soon as they have something to report, they will, and it will be open to the public as Committeewoman Prupus had stated.
Just I want to add one more point on that.
Yes, sir.
On the shade tree, when I met, there was a big concern about removing the tree, which has been there for 200 years, is also a part of it shouldn't be moved. Just adding to it.
May I speak for a minute, Mayor?
You may.
I think we have to really just hold back on misinformation. We have never talked about moving the tree. In fact, all of the companies that we interviewed, that was paramount and upfront that the tree must be preserved. And the company that we wound up hiring even says we can do things that will help that tree survive. Right now, it's surrounded by a lot of blacktop. We have also never, ever said we are building a stage. I don't know where that came from. We're not building a stage. We want to provide more entertainment space for all the programming that the SID has done. Right now, I don't know why the SID is valid. Many people are getting many advantages, Mr. Feld, please, from the SID, the programming that has been provided for this community and for residents and people who come into our community who have enjoyed our programming. We never said we're building an amphitheater. And as far as, music, my gosh, hundreds of people enjoy the 4 concerts that the rec department provides all summer. This is not torture to anybody. This is enjoyment. The children love to dance. I go there, I've been going there for 30 years to the Taylor Park. So I think we really have to just step back, wait till NKW. And in fact, I got an email from a woman who said, wow, their presentation was amazing. I look forward to seeing what they are going to suggest. It's all suggestions. I think everyone should just sit back and wait, and please stop spreading misinformation. It's just not okay. It's not okay with me. I'll speak for myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor.
Oh, and one more thing. Oh, I'm sorry, Tara, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And as far as Mr. Carlin, yeah, I was even Oprah'd because I did put a complaint in about a business in town who has left a gaping hole in their commercial property. We should be finding that person. They know who they are. We should be collecting revenue from people who are leaving things in disrepair or not following the law and are putting themselves or others in harm's way. Yes, we could do better on that too.
Thank you. Ms. Committeewoman Prupus.
Okay. To Ms. Pasternak's point about the second session for the settlement, so the affordable housing, that Monday was the Board of Ed meeting. So I do think it's really important for there to be another meeting because there was supposed to be a meeting on that Wednesday that got, I think it's postponed, right? So I think it is, I think it's also really important that we make sure that these very important meetings are not in conflict. And I know there's a lot of meetings happening throughout the township all the time, but it would be good to have the Board of Ed, to check always on the Board of Ed meetings. So I'd like to see a second of that same, the same professionals, the same topic, just done one more time. So is that something that could happen?
That could be something that could happen. And in the meanwhile, though, we did record it via Zoom. It is on our website that people can check out that meeting. Just so you know, that was purposely done, that it was recorded. But there's no reason why we couldn't have a second meeting. We just have to coordinate all of our professionals. So they don't just work for us, unfortunately. They work for, unfortunately for them, they work for other towns. So if we could get something set up, that would be great.
And then the other thing is that, so on, Mr. Feld brought up the fair share housing on the 28th. It's the
fairness
fairness, right? So I know that people have to sign up for that. And when they move, I'm just kind of a little confused how that isn't an open that anybody can attend to it, and why when it got moved out further, more people either can't just watch it. Like, how is that closed? Why can't our community watch it? Why isn't there a link for everyone to watch it if they want to watch it? And where did that, did that come from the judge? Where did that rule come from?
Well, I can't speak to access, but when the question was asked, when it was moved, whether the opportunity opened up again for individuals to submit that they would like to make a comment or participate in
Or
some
just
way.
observe?
Yeah, and that was, we were informed by the special master and Ed Buzak, our attorney, that it did not. So it did not open again. So
I don't, so the judge, this is like, this doesn't make sense to me, that the judge is not allowing members of the community,
to, as a
It's just
result
not-
of the rescheduling, to then participate, to get in again, to participate if they weren't already signed up for the original fairness hearing.
how did we notify people to begin with about the fairness hearing?
Multiple ways. It was published in the newspaper, it was on the website, it was on social media. Yeah,
Okay.
it was done in multiple ways
For it, all right.
and ways that were required by law as well.
Okay, I don't understand why if they got pushed back, they wouldn't. And so for people who aren't signed up but want to see it, will that be put up? Is that available to people, or is that just?
I can't speak to that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know. I know that the last Zoom call that I was on that had involved a judge and somebody suing our town, they were emphatic that nothing was to be recorded. So I don't know. if they-
Fairness hearing?
No,
will
it
be
was some, it was a
recorded? No,
different, it was a
I just-
lawsuit. I'm just wondering if
I
that's
just don't
precedent. I
understand
don't know.
why
Yes.
they wouldn't allow more people to register once it got pushed back.
I can't speak to that.
I can't. Okay.
Doesn't seem really fair.
Yeah.
Get it? Fairness hearing? Sorry, guys, just trying to.
There, one more topic
Yes.
before we move on.
Yes.
After you're done, I can discuss that. There was some allegation made on police overtime to Mr. Wasserman and I'd like to address that too.
Feel free.
So being in the finance committee last year, we were looking at all the department, what they were spending was, and how and where we can make it efficient. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there were 4 more police officers hired, took them 1-year training, and then they were deployed. We were just looking at the trends of overtime, not just the police department, since police department has the most number of people, and then there is fire department, then there is shade tree, then there's DPW. All those departments, we look at every line item. So making a statement where we should have more overtime on police or less overtime on this or that, that is where day-to-day comes in play, and their department heads knows better for anything and everything they do. Generally, the statement for anything, even in the real life, is you give me more people, there will be less overtime. But you keep looking at trends of how that goes, and if it doesn't come down, you just question in the team meeting, not just for police department, it's overall. We are meeting as a sub-finance committee, and those discussion comes up. That has nothing to do with how to manage day-to-day from our end, because we are board of directors. We don't tell them what to do and what not to do. Overall, if we are using taxpayer dollars, we are just asking those questions and how we are trying to curb them, or can that be even curbed? Those are the questions we ask. And I think it's wrong to say that we are trying to cut overtime for police department, which is truly not the case.
Could I just add to that? And I also have another comment. Thank you, Mayor. One is, I do want to add to that because I think it is a fairly dangerous statement to make, that, we are cutting overtime, and that is then translates into a lack of safety. And I want that to be very clear in that when looking at overtime, certainly there are all types of overtime. And I can guarantee to the public that the area of overtime that would be scrutinized or looked at would not be additional burglary patrols or, things that are assisting in the public safety of our community. And I want to be, very clear on that. I feel like that is a bit of a dangerous statement when making it at a public meeting, that somehow, cutting overtime, her words, and public safety, that we are impacting public safety as a result of looking at overtime. So I just want to be clear. The other thing that I'd like to address, and I'm not sure if I heard it right, but hopefully Mr. Grillo will be able to speak to it in his presentation, is that I believe the number of $1 million was put out
Yes.
regarding the SID, and the money that was given to the SID by the municipality. I think she said almost $1 million. And so if I'm not clear, I do apologize, but I want to also be very careful with throwing out numbers like that when it is at this point in my count of money that has been provided to the SID at 498. And so if she meant something different, I do apologize. But however, I want to be clear with the SID itself, that those are the funds that have been provided, and that is inclusive of the contribution if the budget would be approved. So Mr. Grillo can speak to it more. However, I just do want to be, very cognizant of throwing out numbers and putting out things that, and saying things that may be sensationalized in some way. And I understand that maybe she didn't mean it that way, but
And
definitely.
Mr. McDonald, to the point about all these questions about the SID that they're asking, and that they've asked their attorney or they've asked Mr. Parlavecchio, we up here will not have the answers for them.
No, I think a lot of those questions are for the SID board of directors. And also I think that it's important that, the oversight of the township committee is certainly within, dealing with the budget itself. And so again, if there's a question of some of those things that were brought up, you can certainly bring that up to Mr. Grillo or to the, in this budget process.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And I will add that the public is always invited to the SID's meetings. They're open to the public. That the budget is also presented at these SID meetings. I do attend every SID meeting, private, public, all the meetings. And although we will address the exact budget, when it comes up, I want to assure everybody that as oversight from the TC, I look at every penny that's spent, and I want to assure everybody, although there may be some disagreement with this, that the volunteers that serve and Mr. Parlavecchio and all the people that are working on the SID are so committed. And even though there are people that feel differently here, I will tell you that I've never worked with such a committed group of residents that want to help this town.
Thank you.
And to speak to that, the advisory board, right? Are you
Yes.
guys still looking for?
Yes.
Do you want to let people know?
Well, you know what, Mr.
Is he gonna?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, let's let Steve
Okay.
address that.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Terrific. So the Township Committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to any items listed on the consent agenda? Ladies and gentlemen,
No.
any questions? No? Okay. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 22-043 through Resolution 22-051, which are listed on the consent agenda? So
Motion.
may I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Prupus,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Thol Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mayor Miggins.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have Resolution 22-052, authorization of the execution of 2022 cost-sharing agreement for the Mayor's Council for the Rahway River Watershed Flood Control. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to Resolution 22-052?
Mr. McDonald, to Stephanie Morgan's point, I know that you are working, and if you want to just speak to your conversations or some of it with the state about that infrastructure money and the.
Sure. And then just in a brief explanation of this cost sharing agreement, the mayor's council has decided that they're going to look to reallocate the funding that is done within that agreement. Previously, it had been allocated toward lobbying efforts at the federal level. And much to Miss Morgan's point, as well as the desire of the mayor's council to reallocate that funding to more of a localized effort and study of the consensus plan that we've heard about in terms of the mayor's Rahway group, is to do study about a bypass of the Orange Reservoir and its potential benefits and impacts downstream. And so this cost share agreement is changing in a way that that allocation is being redone for take a pause from the federal lobbying effort, because there is still value in doing that and dealing with the Army Corps. However, with the limited funding of this group, we need to make sure that money is being sourced to the right place. And then this year, it's going to be to do additional study of the Orange Reservoir bypass solution. And in that same vein, we are requesting funding from the state for that plan, for that study, whether it be through the infrastructure money that's being infused or other disaster funding that is being infused to the state. We want to make sure that we're looking to get funding in any way that we can, so that perhaps that fund, the mayor's Rahway can do both, which would be a great win for that group to be able to study as well as lobby for these efforts. But for right now, the focus is going to be on the study.
May I ask you a question? I can't remember the exact figure at the last meeting that we agreed to fund Mott McDonald. And I know they came down from their figure. What is the amount we contracted to them?
Here for Millburn.
No, their whole contract for them they're working with the Flood Mitigation Committee. What was that contract?
Flood Mitigation Committee for Millburn is $76,000.
Right, so that came down by half because they had a lot of information from historic works, correct?
Yeah, we did parse down some of that, but it wasn't, I don't believe it was that significant.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this 70,000 from the, all the towns, is that going towards that 76,000?
No, it's going towards another study of the bypass, because remember that Mott McDonald was retained by the township for our flood mitigation efforts, whether they be, the localized efforts. And then this regional solution, this bypass solution or consensus plan is being funded by all the communities that are part of that, the 8 communities that are part of that council. And also a separate study is being done of that bypass.
Because that 70,000 is not going to be enough for that. Is we're hoping to get state money for that, or we're hoping to get state money to fund whatever we could do?
That will be sufficient for that study. However, if we get money from the state, we will be able to do more.
Okay.
And so I don't think that and possibly do lobbying and things like that. I think the key here is that we need to get the core information of that bypass and what the benefits and what the impacts are downstream, so that we can then take that information and use it for the DEP, the Army Corps, and other efforts that we need to go through for that group.
And lastly, while we're on this topic, remember that one time we had that huge cleanup of all the log jams in there? Has that been an ongoing?
It does seem so. I can't speak that it actually has been, but the Campbell's Mill does look clean.
Good, great, thanks.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 22-052?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Prupus,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mayor Miggins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. 22-053, which is the introduction, approval, and set the public hearing for 2022 Millburn Short Hills Organization Budget. The public hearing will be held on February 15th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Mr. Wasserman?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. So further to my comments before, and again, Mr. Grillo, the Executive Director, will speak in detail about the budget. I did want to just offer some overview comments, and again, I do know that we have, we have residents. We do have some residents that disagree with this. So I think it's, so I just want to say that I respect Mr. Feld and others that come to the meetings to voice their concerns. And I'm always listening, and I think that we're very receptive to hearing that. But I do want to just touch on a few things. You know, before the SID came to be, one of the reasons why we felt very strongly about the SID was we had a vacancy rate. And again, some of these numbers, you know, are debatable, but I really believe they're based in fact. When Mayor Jackie and I got together to pass this ordinance, we had a vacancy rate of over 13%. We saw a lot of empty stores. We had no agent for marketing, no agent for economic development. We saw an opportunity to bring the town forward. And over the course of only a little over a year, maybe over the course of maybe a year and a half, we've got to a point where our vacancy rate is below 10%. So a lot of the empty stores are filled. People, you know, a lot of new merchants have come to town. So I think the SID has done a tremendous job in terms of lowering the vacancy rate, which really goes to our tax base. The other thing I'll touch on a personal level is that we have a closed Main Street now. I mean, I've been a resident in town for 30 years, and I have to say the last summer was magical. To be able to go to spend time with fellow residents, neighbors on Main Street, you know, it was closed. There's a music program where you can spend time with your friends. You don't have to leave town. And this is basic, you know, a lot of this is because of the SID. You know, and I would say the most important thing is that we have a dedicated group of volunteers that meet regularly. Matter of fact, they don't even meet regularly. They meet in subgroups, you know, probably every week. Their activities or their business is done in the next room. So if somebody, you know, had a business question, a business issue, if a merchant had a problem, you know, Mr. Grillo is in the next room. He's here to help our merchants and to help visitors that may want to invest in our township. The other thing that I'll mention is that we have a tremendous efficiency in terms of how the SID is conducted. There is no rent. You know, the SID is based, you know, in this building. So there's a tremendous efficiency. We're not paying rent. And the work is done in this building, and it's done in conjunction with other officials like Mr. McDonald. So it's a very efficient organization. But I will say, I just want to say that to some of the concerns that have been expressed about, you know, money flowing in and out. I go to every meeting, and I will say that from my own point of view, every penny is accounted for. I mean, I know that people say that there's money coming in and out and all this stuff, but I will say that I look at every penny that comes in. There are public meetings that I invite all of my neighbors and residents to come. All of the financials are disclosed at our meetings every month. So I just wanted to present that side of it, that you know, from the town's point of view, that this is it's an agent of change, of positive change for the town. And the last thing I want to touch on is that when Ida hit us, and so many neighbors, you know, that some neighbors lost their homes, and so many people were in trouble, and so many merchants were wiped out. The SID was on the front lines. You know, Steve Grillo was you know, in his sneakers, running into stores, trying to help people, and the SID, you know, was able to officiate over giving out $400,000 to our merchants. Then that really helped people, in my opinion, come back and stay in our community. And I don't think that there's any other community where the township committee committed $225 to help their merchants. So I want to commend our board, you know, our committee for doing that.
225,000?
Well, as part of the township, as part of the township's part in this. But the SID gave out over $400,000, and I'm very proud of what they did to help our merchants. So, and before the SID was created, we didn't have any of that. We didn't have that. We didn't have those feet on the ground. We didn't have that. So with those comments, let me invite Steve to speak specifically about the budget. Steve, welcome.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Good evening. Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard, for those kind words. Mayor Miggins, members of the committee, I apologize for not being there in person this evening, but I have a short presentation that I would like to provide to you. So I'm here this evening to formally present the 2022 budget for the Town Special Improvement District, formerly known as the Millburn Short Hills Business Organization, Incorporated, and doing business as Explore Millburn Short Hills. The district represents over 500 businesses in 5 distinct commercial districts and provides services related to events, promotions and marketing, placemaking and beautification, strategic economic planning, and business advocacy. We had a tremendously successful 2021, as detailed in my presentation of this body on October 5th. Explore hosted nearly 50 live music events, multiple merchant mixers, and community events. We've engaged hundreds of businesses through multimedia platforms, as well as daily interactions in person and via phone and email. Explore has launched multiple placemaking and beautification projects, as well as participated in a number of internal and township-initiated planning and policy studies. And as Richard mentioned, we also oversaw the distribution of $420,000 in Hurricane Ida relief funds to 75 different businesses throughout the town. In order to continue this work and expand our service portfolio, we are requesting that the Township Committee review and approve the budget we have presented. At the November 10th annual meeting of the Board of Trustees, the budget before you this evening was unanimously approved, and per the requirements of Ordinance 2561-20 sent to you for your consideration and authorization for public comment. The total budget for January through December 2022 is $273,375. This includes a $204,000 special assessment levied on each qualified tax lot within the district, $10,000 in unexpended non-restricted funds from 2021, $6,000 in funds being carried over from 2021's Explore Refresh Storefront Beautification Micro Grant Program, which will be restricted to that effort, and $53,375 from the township, which is 50% of the executive director's salary, as approved in Section 13 of the aforementioned ordinance. In terms of specifics, staffing expenses total $144,750 and includes salaries for the executive director, the marketing and events manager, and summer interns. This differs from the 2021 actual costs, as there was no full-time director, with the exception of approximately 1 month, until May. The expenses related to the marketing and events manager and interns are budgeted to remain roughly the same as in 2021. As a point of reference, a total of $91,375 in staff expenses will be paid through the property owner assessment, approximately 45% of that assessment. That is compared to the 2018 DMDA budget, which allocated $124,490 out of a $206,876 assessment, or 60% compared to the 45. Technology expenses related to email services, website design updates, maintenance and hosting, and IT tech support are budgeted $13,200, which is $600 less than the actual cost for the same in 2021. The budget allocates $7,000 to website improvements with the hope of expanding functionality to include employment opportunities and announcements, as well as an updated and expanded business directory. Professional services, including retained legal counsel, accountant and audit services, a third-party consultant for annual board training, and insurance expenses total $25,425. Explore has a counsel retained on a monthly basis for $1,200, who is responsible for attending board meetings, responding to numerous OPA requests, and reviewing contracts and other legal documents. General operating expenses, including organizational dues, meals and travel, and office supplies, accounts for $2,500. In 2022, Explore will keep a contingency account of $20,000, which is intended to be accessed on an as-needed basis. This is a new introduction for 2022. This line item will serve to cover unexpected expenses and some operating expenses in the first quarter of 2023, prior to the collection of the tax assessment typically in April. This is a good governance practice for SIDS to ensure that the organization is financially stable for all 4 quarters and can address emergent spending needs. $67,500 will be expended directly into the service area. This includes $6,500 for marketing and advertising and $10,000 allocated to a yet-to-be-determined economic stimulus program. $20,000 will be allocated to holiday and seasonal events and live music. $21,000 will be for streetscape projects, signage, and banners, and $4,000 to strategic studies, such as our downtown parking efficiency study in 2021. This represents a nearly $16,000 increase in programmatic investment in the SID compared to 2021. Additionally, we expect sponsorships for various events, including the live music program, as well as to provide project management services and assistance to the township for various efforts, which will include the streetscape and pedestrian experience, but not necessarily come out of the SID's budget. An example of this is the parking deck signage design and installation discussed this evening. On behalf of Explore Millburn's Board of Trustees and the many businesses and property owners we serve every day, I thank you for your consideration of this budget and your ongoing support of the organization and our mission. I'm happy to answer any specific questions or any question that may have been raised by the public this evening.
Thank you, Steve. Would any member of the committee like to comment on the presented 2022 budget? The public hearing and consideration of adoption of this 2022 budget is scheduled for the February 15th Township Committee meeting, which begins at 7 p.m. here at Town Hall. The introduced budget is available in the Township Clerk's office and also will be posted on the Township website. Once the annual assessment roll is certified by our tax assessor, letters will be sent to each property owner within the districts, and the full roll will be posted on our website. The annual assessment roll is also scheduled to be before the committee at our February 15th Township Committee meeting. Any members of the TC like to comment on the presented budget?
I have a question for Steve, but it's more about if you could just let everyone know about the advisory board.
Sure.
Is that okay? Steve?
Yes, committee member.
Can you let everybody know about the advisory board that you're forming?
Absolutely. So our bylaws require the creation of an advisory committee. This is a non-voting recommendation committee. We are, as our bylaws state, we will have 15 members, 3 from each district. So 3 times 5 equals 15. Right now we have 9 out of 15 folks who have submitted interest. So at our February meeting, we will be voting on who to include in that committee. So we're very happy that we're at 9 out of 15. We're encouraging to promote that via social media. And of course, we would encourage the public and committee members that if you know anyone that is a business or property owner within the district, please have them reach out directly to me. We'll add them to the list. And we hope to have a full roster of 15 to approve at our February meeting. But I'm very encouraged that we already have 9.
Great, thank you.
Let me ask you something, Steve, to that point. Is there a way for you to let people know what districts have had those positions filled? So if there's 5 districts and say something like Chatham Road, nobody's raised their hand or something, is there a way to let people know where the vacancies are, as it were?
Yes, so at this point, we have availability for all of the districts besides downtown. We've reached, I believe, 5 from downtown. However, some of those folks may choose not to participate in the end. And so we encourage anybody that's interested, regardless of district, to please submit your information. Just send me an email, steve@exploremillburnshorthills.org, and then we'll eventually cull through that list. But at this point, the more the merrier.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Great for having a passionate person working on this.
Mayor, do you mind if I just answer one question that was brought up by multiple people regarding the $1 million spent?
It would be my pleasure if you would.
Yes, so I don't know where that number comes from. That's a number that's been bandied around on social media and emails for a couple of weeks. I can't say that it's right or wrong. I don't want to disparage anyone, but to my knowledge, I don't understand how we could get to that number, considering that this year's budget is 200,000 or so. I don't know where that anywhere gets close to $1 million. So if anyone has evidence of that, I'd be happy to review it. But I concur with Mr. McDonald that I don't even think we're at 50% of that number.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, Mr. Grillo. Awesome.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else on the committee have any other questions for Mr. Grillo?
Nope.
None? Seeing none. Is there a motion to approve resolution 22-053?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
May I please have a roll call vote?
Ms. Prupus,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Thal Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mayor Miggins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are at new business. So,
Old business. Old business.
old business, new business, old business, old business. Two-way traffic circulation design for Millburn Avenue and Essex Street. Committee Woman Prupus?
Sure. The subcommittee met last Friday and we reviewed a proposal. Colliers had came and presented, I believe it was in the November meeting. And then we'd asked for a proposal as if we were gonna take the next step of a conceptual design phase forward with some public participation. Mr. McDonald, there were a few things that you were gonna ask. Were you?
Yes, we were able to.
Great. Do you want to give an update? Well, do you want to just give a summary or an update, anything about where we stand with the project?
So as Committeewoman Prupus had mentioned, we met with Colliers to discuss the revised proposal that included some reduction in that proposal as a result of survey work the township had already completed and thus would not need to be completed by Colliers as a duplication. However, they do still have some survey work that needs to be done for areas that require additional study for the two-way circulation. However, they've presented they've put together the reduced proposal, and we had some items of discussion with them in the subcommittee that were circled around one, making sure that they had the goals of the project involved in the proposal, as well as any future contract that we were working towards certain outlined goals that were presented at that meeting in November. The other item was that we wanted to make sure that they had a handle on pedestrian counts, and whether that was from a previous study, Complete Streets, when that occurred, or other sources to make sure that they have a handle on pedestrian counts, and also understanding other elements that will be impacting the downtown area in terms of development that should also be counted in that. Lastly, we had asked them at one point for a what's considered a synchro model and a animation of how this all would work, so that when discussing with the public, that there's a visualization to it rather than just a conceptual drawing, but something that actually moved and people could see and understand and feel how that traffic would be done. In speaking to them earlier today, they had mentioned that was not included in their proposal, however, is not a heavy lift, because that's actually how they're doing this on the back end. So all they would have to do is prepare that for presentation. So there would not be a large added expense as a result of that, or any additional time constraints as a result of that. It's just a matter of preparing what they've already been working on for presentation, and so that could be easily done. That was the items that we've addressed with them. They are looking into pedestrian count.
And the timeline too. I think that we were getting a sense of timing.
Correct. So they are also working on that. However, that will probably just take a little bit. And so had mentioned to them that, what we're working toward here on this end to make sure that they were able to get us something.
Great. So the next steps of that subcommittee, everyone of the subcommittee agreed that they would like, that these were the questions that we had. So I guess we'll go back, we'll meet again. We'll get a timeline, and then we want to just have any questions that you may all have, because the next step would be bringing it to vote on the contract for them to start this are we calling it a conceptual design? Is that, and public?
Correct. Yeah, it's a 30%
And
conceptual design.
with
of-
public input and
Correct.
participation.
That's correct.
So does anyone have any questions?
I'm curious, a few things. Colliers is no longer our on-call traffic consultants. And I know we agreed to keep them on to just kind of, suss this out a bit, but where does Brightview, our new traffic consultant, fit into all this? And I think it's very important that before we move on, that we engage Brightview. The other thing I think is very important is the two towns that did this, Hackensack and Rahway. I think we should take a field trip, by two or by one. And I spoke to the mayor, Ray Giacomo of Rahway, who grew up in Rahway and they changed their town. And he said he would give us the name of the woman who kind of led that in their town to find out really how it happened. How did the community react to it? Did they meet their goals? Because when we were interviewing traffic consultants, they brought up Hackensack. One said it was great, one said it wasn't good, one said Rahway worked, one said it didn't. So this is a huge change. I would really encourage us to have Brightview look at this. I think this is something that, I don't know if the timeline is 1, 2, 3, or 4 years. And I think that something is more immediate, is we should absolutely be talking about bringing those 2 lanes of traffic back from Douglas to Town Hall. Because as everyone is aware, we're having a lot of construction, a lot of new cars and bodies are going to be in this town from the Saks project, from what was Millburn Feed, Wells Fargo. I think that should be talked about in a more immediate conversation. This should be talked about with Brightview in its research. I would like to go meet with Ray Giacomo from Rahway and find out how Hackensack decided to make this move. That's my feeling.
Can I answer some of your
Yeah.
things? So I absolutely agree with you in having Brightview look at it. I think it's a matter of when and at what stage in the game, because I think that we need to have something to present to Brightview. And sticking with Collars, who's already done so much work on this, to get them to a point that we can have something that the public can have input on, that Collars can, that Brightview can have input on for sure. So I think it's just a matter of timing. And when I asked for timing for the proposal, it was more about the timing it would take for them to complete that specific scope in the proposal, not the timing that it would take in terms of how long to actually implement, because that's a whole other discussion that, might be far out. So I think we need to do this scope and then have Brightview comment on that scope and kind of look at it as another set of eyes on it when it's done before we go anywhere with it. And then also in terms of the second lane comment, I know that I had asked Mr. McDonald to send that to all the different, and you were I think I sent you an email asking when we would get that back. There's 2 separate conversations. They need to be looked at, in my point of view, as 2 separate conversations. That's how I feel about it, because the
But we're
2-way may
jumping
never
over it.
happen. And that I agree with you that I think with all the developments and everything that's we know for sure happen. That second lane, in my opinion, we need to be talking about that now as well. And so did you ask them for a date when they were going to get that back?
No, I've heard from everyone except for one party, so I will follow up with that individual and.
Okay, and you'll send a memo or something?
Correct. And some of them have responded briefly, but I will share their response.
So let me ask this. Is there consensus to continue with Collier to talk about the next piece of the 2-way traffic circulation? Is there consensus with the TC on that?
Me being part of the committee as well.
Can you talk into that so everyone can hear you? Thank you, Mr.
Me being part of that committee, I really like the idea of actually Rahway to just take a field trip there or take a look, or what we did in flood mitigation. We had a meeting with the residents and with their TC member where they showed us also the pictures of the houses that was elevated on Zoom. So I think it'd be a good idea for us as a team, the two-way circular traffic team, to have that meeting, and it's a brilliant idea.
And then come back and visit this, to see if we take that next step.
Colliers has done a lot of work already, so getting others' inputs on it will be fine, but just changing Colliers to someone else, I think it'll be a big undertaking, and Colliers have already spoken to county engineers and done the legwork. So much of legwork already.
So there's consensus then to have, what I'm hearing, consensus to have Colliers move forward with the presentation that they gave to us this week. Is that what it was? You
The
said
proposal.
The proposal?
Right, with, I think that the subcommittee, this is more of just like the subcommittee will meet again. And then at some point in February, the proposal will be on here to be voted upon.
Okay.
So I just wanted to check in, we can meet with the Rahway, see if there were any other questions or concerns before we get to that, where it's not in front of you, and then I'm hearing, you know what I mean?
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, it sounds like everyone's in agreement.
Makes sense, yeah.
Committee and Wasserman, yes, yes?
Yep.
Okay. Fabulous.
Great.
Thank you.
Wait, so before we move on, are we jumping over, talking about bringing those 2 lanes back, which could be something that could
Oh,
happen?
no,
sooner.
wait, so Mr. McDonald said that he's gonna
waiting
send
on
a memo.
reports.
From whom?
From
I didn't get that.
fire, so
Oh, okay, I
fire,
didn't know that.
police.
Mhm.
Engineer, I'm sure.
Well, we
Well,
have
we
the
already
memo
have
from
the
the engineer.
engineer, the
Special Improvement
first
District.
aid, right?
First aid squad.
Steve Grillo.
Yeah.
So were we going to also hear from our traffic consultant on?
And then they were
Correct,
doing
and
that
Bragg,
too.
Good.
And our planner.
That's
So
how we
all
left
those
it
people,
last time.
yeah, all those
Okay.
people have been given the that proposal or
We'll
that
get
study.
feedback.
We're
And
just
then we're gonna
waiting
get
for-
all the feedback,
Great.
and then
To
at
be
some
able to
point,
get-
Yeah, I didn't know who you were talking about. I thought you were waiting for hearing from the 5 of us.
Right, I didn't know,
Okay.
I didn't know.
Yeah, so we are continuing that
Yes.
conversation.
Correct.
yeah,
Okay, so that's really important. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
So maybe, since there are so many subcommittees, I think what happened last year, we ran a little short on sharing of information. So maybe the subcommittees can start sharing, because there's only 2 people allowed in a subcommittee. That leaves 3 people who have really no idea maybe of some things that are going on. Maybe we need a little more information sharing.
That's why it was here. I think that's why Tara wanted to bring this here, to talk about this and give you the input.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Old business number 2, 911 dispatch services. Mr. Vinayak, you wish to address that?
Yes.
Okay.
So last time, or a couple meetings ago, I've talked about this. 911 dispatch services, I had our quarterly meeting, this meeting today. It's a phenomenal group, fantastic, passionate. There were 3 office staff, now there is 2 office staff. The executive director was the deputy director before. She became the executive director now. Great person. Then there is a training officer who has become now the deputy director, and there is no training officer as a separate body. And I think they are just outsourcing that. So overall, I think they have about 16 more employees, and they're looking to hire 2 more. There are 2 open positions. So making it out to be about 20 people team. And they have 3 towns, and the 4th town, they've taken over parts of internally to serve the town at a service of about, I think, $100-some thousand. They are trying to get other services for that town also to be sourced from that office. But since this is a service and we outsource it, I think a review of that service is important. And like we were discussing earlier, we were trying to get them here, or Committeewoman Eglo was trying to get them here to present. So we can have them present, as well as we should look at other options, what we have, just to review all our options again and make sure we pick our best option, whatever we go with. If we could stay with Mountain Valley, there is nothing against them per se. But as I said, since it is an outsourced service for us, we should always be reviewing our services. There is a Union County that offers services that actually service 13 towns. We have an option of bringing it back in town. There is a company that actually does it for you. So I think we should review all three of them. Again, I have no agenda here to just bulldoze this and get it done. As long as you guys are okay, the entire committee, if we have all together vote to do this, great. If you don't, that's fine too.
Let's find out. Do we have consensus to do some more research on this, on the 911?
Well, I just want to add something that I'm not sure that we're aware of, and Mr. McDonald maybe can address this. We have a very limited time in terms of our contract, you know, where we have to make a decision whether we're staying with the service that we currently have, from what I understand.
How long is our contract?
No,
Mr.?
I think it's that timeline each year.
No, but if we wanted, what I'm saying is that if we wanted to leave, you know, let's say we make a decision, we do these presentations. Don't we have to make a decision in the next, you know, by April or March?
Right. So what Mr. Was,
Yeah, sure, please.
I think what you're saying is what we discussed last year. I think we had this conversation sometime in summer. And we were told you have to make the decision if you want to stay with them by the end of March. So we cannot make anything now for the rest of the year, which is okay. So what Mr. Wasserman is saying, want to make a decision. There is nothing again on the card
Right,
here.
right.
If you want to make a decision to move away from them in order to be making sure that they are not paralyzed, we have to give them by the end of March that by the end of the year, we want to do this.
Okay,
So they have other room or other places to bring on and they are not dismantled.
so let's,
I think that's what you're calling.
Yeah, that's what it's saying. So I just wanted people to know that there is a time, there is a
Time
timeline.
frame.
Yeah.
okay, so how does the rest of the committee feel about this? Do they wish to research this or do they want to let sleeping dogs slide for the year?
Well, even if you sleep for the rest of the year, I think we should still review our options. That's why I brought it to the table.
I can appreciate that. So that's why I'm asking if everyone else feels the same way. You want to, Committeeman Vinayak, you'd like to look into it? Committee,
No, not
No.
at this time.
Mr. Committeeman Wasserman?
Yes, I would like to explore all of our options, you know, in presentations. And I'd
Okay.
like to have our current one, you know, Union County, and also the one that would do it in our township. You know, I think that it's a good referral. It's a good thing for us to look
Okay.
at.
Committeewoman Rupes?
At this time, I don't see the need to do it.
You don't want to do it. Okay. So we have 2 yeses, we have 2 nos. I think I'm going to suggest that we table it for now and you have a couple more meetings under your belt and then we maybe visit it at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
New business? Mr. McDonald, this all has to do with the affordable housing ordinances. Would you be good enough to speak to those for us this evening?
Of course, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is really just, I want to bring it to everyone's attention, the Township Committee as well as the public, that there are elements of the settlement agreement that will continue to move forward as a policy perspective as well regarding affordable housing. There are several ordinances and resolutions that the township is required to adopt and move forward with. One of those is to establish a zoning code for affordable housing. This will end up being section 501 of the township's code of the development code. And while this is still in draft form and we're still working on it and it still needs to be reviewed or has been reviewed by Fair Share Housing, we're waiting for all of their comments to come back. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that these are going to be coming forward at some point. The other one is a mandatory set-aside ordinance, which will require that any future development over 5 units sets aside 20%. There is also going to be a resolution to appoint a municipal housing liaison with the township. There will also be a resolution to establish a affirmative marketing plan. And there will also be an ordinance to establish a development fee, which would then be put into a development affordable housing trust fund. So all of these policy items are going to be coming in the near future before the Township Committee. Certainly You will have all that information as drafts and be able to review them, but there will probably be a quick turnaround in which they need to be introduced as well as adopted. So just wanted to bring it up to the public and to the committee that those will be coming.
Okay, terrific.
I have a question.
No,
The municipal housing officer is,
Yeah, it's an administrative agent. It's someone who is helping to administer your affordable housing in your community. So, it's generally not it's a company. You go out for like an RFP or RFQ for firms that offer this service to municipalities.
and is it each development has their own firm or just one firm that works with each developer?
It's one firm that works. So it's a firm that works with us to administer our affordable housing program. So each development generally will have its own firm, similar to the Upton right now has Pizarro that does their affordable housing marketing and leasing and different things like that, qualification. However, there's somebody that works with the township to make sure that we're administering our affordable housing program.
Is that, and we just contract them
Correct.
and they just oversee it and make sure that we're following all the rules and that.
That we're compliant,
Okay.
yes.
That wouldn't be Beth McManus or that's not the same.
No.
That's not what she
No.
does. Okay, and also, can you just address for me the affordable housing fee that goes into the trust fund? I remember when we were discussing this, that could be structured a few different ways in terms of who gets charged for what in terms of this. And I think it's a really important issue for the committee to take up, that we have a comprehensive fee in place. So we can start funding our trust fund.
You mean the developer fee,
Yeah,
not the affordable housing?
No, the developer fee. Because I remember that when we were discussing it, the developer fee can come in several different forms. And it's something that we should really address, and we should make sure that we have a fair and comprehensive fee structure in place, because 2025 is coming. And the township, I think, is gonna, like other towns, is gonna need that in place.
Can that be retroactive to?
No.
No. But, and it also, just to be clear too, that the development fee ordinance, one, there's statute that determines your limits and how much you can charge. Also, it is not applicable to any inclusionary development.
That's right. But there are choices, and I
Yes.
mean, maybe.
You can do it for a whole addition, or you can do it for,
And does
size
our
of.
planner, I'm not answering my own question, but does our planner kind of make a recommendation to the committee, like, you can have it look like this, or you can have it look like this? In other words, that fee structure could be a few different ways.
Yes, I think that's true. And I also think that there's also another vetting process also through Fair Share Housing. Once again, they're going to review that ordinance and they're going to make sure that it's consistent with.
Is Beth writing who's writing these orders?
Correct.
Beth
Yes.
is.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. McDonald on this? Nope. Consensus to move forward on it? Yes. Yes, thank you. Does any committee member have any other item of new business to address?
I have one last piece of business.
Yes.
The one last thing before we go.
Yes.
Garden State Hemp is
Yes.
reopening after Ida.
Mhm.
They've had like many other merchants, they've had a very tough time of it. They're the nicest people. And I just want to encourage our friends and neighbors and residents. They're having kind of an official reopening tomorrow, and they're on Millburn Avenue, the nicest people.
At noon?
Please go, at noon, I think between noon and 2. So please go show them some Millburn love.
And
Yes.
one last thing, sorry, but
Sure.
we're interviewing. I just think the community should know that we're doing our interviews for the
That we have-
100% affordable housing
Developer.
Developer.
on
Yes.
Thursday and Friday. So I want to put that
There
out to
are,
the
yes, we are, there were 10
community.
companies that submitted RFQs. We interviewed them and got it down to 4 that submitted RFPs. And members of the township committee will be interviewing the the companies this week to be continued. So may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
May I have a